Get Rich Education is brought to you by Norada Real Estate, the Real Asset Investor, and Highlands Residential Mortgage.
Are you having a hard time finding great investment properties? Unfortunately, the best deals are rarely found locally. Successful investing begins with the right properties in the right markets. Norada Real Estate provides everything you need to invest in the best deals across the U.S. Our simple, proven system will help you create real wealth and passive monthly cash flow. Get your free copy of the ultimate guide to passive real estate investing at noradarealestate.com/guide. That's NORADA realestate.com/guide.
Welcome to Get Rich Education with Keith Weinhold, giving you information and ideas on the investment that has turned more ordinary people into millionaires and billionaires than anything else, and can provide you with more wealth and happiness than you ever thought possible. Now, here's your host, investor, entrepreneur, business owner, and educator, Keith Weinhold.
Welcome to Get Rich Education, episode 132. Hi, I'm your host, Keith Weinhold, and we've assembled some weapons of mass production for you today. Yes, we're going to discuss some favorite websites and apps for creating wealth and creating time for you. But first, one weapon of mass wealth production is passive real estate investing itself. So we're going to talk about how you can get a 51% first-year return on investment when this is your vehicle of choice. And does that sound irresponsibly high to even say out loud? Well, we're going to break down exactly how that happens in a minute and compare that to stock, bond, and mutual fund investing, and your long-term returns with those are 0 per annum, or often even less than 0 once adjusted for inflation, emotion, taxes, and fees. And additionally, with those type of low-yield vehicles, now your future is invested in something where you have little control over the outcome. So bottom line, when it comes down to turnkey real estate investing, let's look at what your typical return on investment is, your ROI. And by the way, I'm a real estate guy that doesn't love real estate, okay? It can be messy. What can go wrong with real estate? Well, the outside is exposed to the elements while the inside is exposed to a tenant. Well, I like real estate because I know that it's very realistic that while a property manager does the work and the maintenance for me, even factoring that expense in, I can achieve a year one ROI of 51%. So let's look at each of the 5 ways that you are paid with a simple example here, and then we'll add up your rates of return from each one of those 5 to see how much you would be paid at the end of year one in terms of a total rate of return after those 5 are added up. And I was at a real estate investing presentation last week, and again, they mentioned the 4 ways that you're paid, but most forget the 5th, and so did they. Okay, so let's assume that you've carefully purchased a renovated, tenant-occupied $100,000 rental single-family home where the rent income exceeds the expenses, and we're often discussing exactly where you can find these in the U.S. Midwest and South. With your 20% down payment, that leaves you with an $80,000 loan, and say you're paying a 5% interest rate on a 30-year fixed amortizing mortgage, just your regular loan there. Okay, number 1, the first of 5 ways you're paid is with appreciation. Your property appreciates from $100,000 up to $106,000 in this example year here. That's just being commensurate with real estate's national and historic appreciation rate of 6%. 6% is not very thrilling, but your $6,000 gain is based on your down payment. That $6,000 gain gets divided by your $20,000 down, and that magic of leverage means that your return is 30% because you got that 6% gain on both your $20,000 down payment, and the return on the $80,000 that you borrowed from the bank is yours too, okay? So you've already got a 30% return from just your first of 5 ways being paid. The second way you're paid is with cash flow. So let's say your $1,000 of monthly rental income on this property minus $850 of monthly expenses leaves you with $150 of monthly cash flow, okay? And your $850 of monthly expenses, that's broken down into a mortgage payment of $430, $100 each for property tax, insurance, and property management, $70 for repairs, $50 for vacancy. Okay, that leaves you with that $150 monthly residual income. That's $1,800 annually. So that $1,800 annually of cash flow divided by your $20,000 down payment, that's the portion we call the cash-on-cash return. So this is another 9% return in addition to the 30% that you got from the leveraged depreciation. So now we're up to 39% with just the first two ways that you're paid. The third one is loan paydown. And unlike your own home where you work to pay down the principal yourself, well, in this case, your tenant pays what would be the $98 monthly principal portion of your $80,000 loan on this property. That $98 of principal paydown each month times 12, that's $1,176 that the tenant pays down for you annually divided by your $20K of skin in the game. That means that's another 6% return for you. And now we're up to a 45% rate of return. The fourth one is a tax benefit. We're talking about both the mortgage interest deduction and something called depreciation. And the short story on depreciation is that means you don't even have to pay tax on all of your rent income. And your return from your tax benefit can be really hard to measure because it's based on your personal situation. But we'll conservatively call this investment tailwind another 2%. So now we're up to 47%. And that fifth and final one that most forget is that just like inflation erodes the value of your lump of savings, inflation erodes the weight of your mortgage debt. So the fifth way that you have as a profit center is this inflation hedging benefit. So your $80,000 loan today has its drag diluted over time as more and more dollars circulate in an economy. It gets easier to pay back. And also your $430 mortgage payment, that stays fixed over time. So on a monthly basis, that's easier to pay back as more dollars circulate in the economy. We'll call this benefit another return of 4%. You add up your return from the 5 ways you're paid, and your year one return from this income property is a whopping total ROI of 51%. Yes, really. Adjust that for 5% inflation, and you've got a 46% inflation-adjusted return. Of course, none of this is even close to a guarantee. This is investing. It could be lower. It could be higher, too. And don't expect a 46% ROI every year either. For one thing, accumulating equity over time will erode your total ROI. You can take action on that by doing cash-out refinances and tax-deferred exchanges. But even if a lot of things go wrong and your return is only half of that 46% inflation-adjusted return, you have handily beat most professional investors. And this is exactly why we talk about this stuff here, okay? This is a weapon of mass production, mass wealth production. And let's note some other limitations in that example, okay? We didn't factor in your buyer mortgage loan closing costs, which are often up to or about 4% of the purchase price. The seller can often help you pay for those, so maybe you only have to pay 2%. And I've talked about in previous shows the exact words I write in the contract, in the purchase sale agreement, to get the most that I can for a concession from the seller, because that helps my cash-on-cash return. There's some other limits too. If you buy property in a losing job market or hire a bad property manager, your entire investment could go south. That's why we only talk about the better ones here. And let's note some positives as well. Up in the cash flow portion that we talked about there, your property management cost is considered, and that means your income is passive. And we've also accounted for property hazard insurance, shielding you from some big losses. This is investing. Things not only can go wrong, they will go wrong sometimes. Okay, the month that you had to spend $500 to replace a section of fence out of your own pocket, and insurance didn't help because its deductible was also $500, that won't feel so great. And the most efficient way to buy these properties is through a turnkey real estate investing provider, the companies that fix and flip low-priced homes with high ratios of rent income to purchase price, and we can go ahead and purchase their fix and flips. Now, for the uninitiated, some of that cognitive dissonance needs to be bridged. Yes, that gap between what one thinks is true and what really is true, because most people were brought up in the traditional consumer credit world where a 10% return per annum is a mark of a good return. We're talking about a 51% return here, or 46% adjusting for a 5% inflation rate. Where could you find a property that might perform like that, you might ask? I'm pleased to announce that we've made it easier than ever for you. You can find those at greturnkey.com. Yes, greturnkey.com. That's our new resource where you can land and get a hold of a free report in various turnkey markets. And in that report, you can connect with credible turnkey real estate investing providers in the investor-advantaged geographic market of your choice, which is almost never the market that you live in. And this is getting more and more difficult because the inventory is really becoming depleted in so many markets. In fact, our Atlanta provider is not even part of greturnkey.com right now because their inventory is essentially non-existent at this point, and we don't want to waste your time. Dallas and Jacksonville have been working well lately for some investors. There's still inventory moving there. Memphis just continues to work as a cash flowing market. You're less likely to get the 6% appreciation in Memphis, like I mentioned in the example earlier, I believe. But Memphis keeps cash flowing, and it's not flashy, but it keeps producing those checks in the mail. It just keeps plugging along because Memphis is America's distribution center. And in a world that increasingly buys stuff on Amazon, Memphis stays on top as America's #1 cargo airport in the U.S. So yeah, for some, it's about overcoming that gap between what one believes to be true and what really is true. 46% ROI, quite possible. For example, you believe that a 47-year-old woman could not possibly be physically attractive, right? Wrong. Jennifer Lopez is 47. Okay, maybe that's a one-off thing. Well, Mariah Carey is 47 and Gwen Stefani is too. Cognitive dissonance bridged and gone. See, 47-year-old women are attractive. Okay, so there are gaps between what we believe to be true and what really is true all over the place. So getting back to weapons of mass production, today, our guest and I are going to discuss some websites and apps that you're likely not familiar with when it comes to researching income property. The MLS, LoopNet, Zillow, Trulia, Google Earth, they're ones you've likely already used and know about. Last week, Ken McElroy was here with us, and he told us about websites he uses to research big picture metro trends, like where you're going to have infrastructure improvements, or for planning and zoning considerations, or what big employer might move in next. And that way you can help forecast what real estate tends to be more prosperous. Neighborhood Scout, that's a website that does a good job of aggregating data into something useful for where you might want to live or invest next. You know, for example, you just can't really go out there and say something like, Philadelphia is no good for investment because I read that they have a lot of crime there. Okay, well, that's something you can't quite say because you need to divide that up by area and more, and neighborhoodscout.com helps you do that. In fact, you can't even say that West Philadelphia is no good for investment because you see that it's high crime. Well, I know some parts of West Philly that I would invest in and other parts of West Philly that I would stay away from. So it comes down to neighborhoods and even certain blocks. And, you know, it's kind of funny. Think about the city that you live in, if you live in a city. There are parts where you would prefer to live and parts where you certainly wouldn't. You know, yet when someone thinks about a city other than the one that they live in, they tend to oversimplify, okay? Like Detroit gets beat up all the time. You know, people just say, oh, that's just a city full of crime and vacant homes. But there are a lot of safe parts of Detroit. And plus crime, just the word crime itself, that really doesn't even tell you everything that you need to know. Okay, what about crime in an area being violent crime versus nonviolent crime? Or what about two areas that have the same crime rate in the same types of crime, but one area's rate has fallen for years and the other area's rate has risen for years, but at this very snapshot in time, they both happen to have the same crime rate? Okay, that says nothing about trends. There's so much data, and at times I see Neighborhood Scout do a good job of identifying what might be an up-and-coming area when they aggregate all this data. That is a paid service. And again, I guess it just helps dispel one's biases and cognitive dissonance. Maybe I've got Philadelphia on the mind because that's where I'll be for next week's show. Today, I'm in my hometown of Anchorage, Alaska. And you know, there's a statistical paradox here too. Anchorage is in a recession, like I've mentioned on previous shows, and it's losing population to the tune of about 0.5% over the last year. But yet here in my neighborhood, just about 2 blocks away from me, they're building new construction homes, and those brand new homes are sold and occupied as soon as construction's done. Okay, that's not recessionary behavior there. But yet, see, if one simply sees that Anchorage is losing population and they just look at that and they lump it all together, and then maybe they didn't think it was possible that new construction homes are being occupied immediately here, but they are just in my neighborhood, which is just one part of just the west side of Anchorage. If you're listening to the podcast version of Get Rich Education today, like most of you are, we are one of the few shows available on Amazon. So if you have an Amazon Echo or similar device, you can say, Alexa, play the Get Rich Education podcast, and it will start playing so you can listen to GRE hands-free. There's another resource worth mentioning. That is the Overcast podcast listening app for iPhone. I would imagine that Android has it too. Overcast has a user-friendly interface, and you can make some features customizable. For example, you can change those skip forward and skip backward buttons to the number of seconds that you want them to be. You might know today's guest, Seth Williams from Bigger Pockets and the Lighter Side of Real Estate. Seth's info today, I think, is going to be applicable to most anybody, and especially more so if you're a do-it-yourselfer and more into self-management than professional management, but it will help both types. A lot of the things that Seth and I are going to talk about are things that I have assistants do for me, but it's still good to know my way around them so that way I can help lead others. We're going to talk about weapons of mass production together next. Are you looking to invest in your first investment property or grow your existing inventory? Highlands Residential Mortgage can help, offering down payments as low as 15% and credit score requirements down to 620. Their streamlined process is designed to help investors close their loans quickly and without any surprises. You need someone who knows cash flowing real estate and can help guide you through the muddy waters of today's lending environment. So call Graham Parham today, toll free at 855-326-6802. The Parham team can help you purchase or refinance any of your 1 to 4 family investment properties.
NMLS number 195724, 12001 North Central Expressway, Suite 750, Dallas, Texas 75243. Equal housing lender, not licensed in all states.
As a lot of investors know, multifamily real estate has been one of the best asset classes to be invested in most of the last decade. While the great deals have been harder to find lately, there are still opportunities in select markets where savvy investors can get lots of appreciation and strong cash flow if you have a great team. Dave Zook, founder and president of The Real Asset Investor, and his team have been very active in the multifamily space in Memphis, Tennessee. On the heels of the Great Recession of 2009, Dave and his team quietly started acquiring multifamily assets, and in the last few years, he has syndicated over 2,000 apartment units, creating strong cash flow streams and big appreciation for lots of their investors. It's not too late to get involved. If you're an accredited investor and you would like to learn more about investing in great multifamily apartments with a world-class team, email Dave and his team at info@therealassetinvestor.com.
This is Rich Dad Advisor Tom Wheelwright. Listen to Get Rich Education with Keith Weinhold and don't quit your daydream.
Today's guest is a residential income property owner, and he's a land investor with nearly a decade of experience in the commercial banking industry as well. You might know him from Bigger Pockets and the Lighter Side of Real Estate. He's also the founder of retipster.com, a real estate investing blog that offers real-world guidance for part-time real estate investors. Welcome back to Get Rich Education, Seth Williams.
Hey, Keith. Thanks for having me back.
Seth, you were here, it was over a year ago, probably close to a year and a half ago, and we were talking about some of the best real estate investor and productivity websites and apps. And, these things change over time. If you're listening to this show 5 years from now, there's probably been some pretty substantial change in this space. So I wanted to have you back a year and a half later just to find out what some of the investor and productivity resources are that you're using, Seth. And now I assume a lot of these that you're mentioning today, they are mobile compatible. They have an app.
Yes, you got it.
All right. So what's the first one?
Well, the first one that came to mind is a website called BombBomb, and I think you and I are both using this now.
Yeah.
But it's for years I had used a site that was kind of like BombBomb, but not quite as sophisticated. It was called iJot. And really the idea behind these websites is to allow you to send video emails to people. And I know the first time I ever got a video email from somebody, it just like blew my mind. It was not what I was expecting at all. But, somebody was introducing themselves to me and I got to see their face and hear their voice. And I just thought it was really, really cool and a great way to communicate and convey complex ideas or just show a friendly face. I mean, there's endless applications for video email, and I don't know hardly anybody who's really utilizing it to its full effectiveness. BombBomb has an app as well, so you can take videos of yourself from your phone, or you can do it on your laptop or desktop computer. And I use it, every week. I don't want to say with every email I do. Sometimes I think emails are actually just easier to type. There's different circumstances where it makes more sense to put it all in writing versus conveying it with your own voice. But either way, it's just a really nice tool to have. And BombBomb integrates really well with Gmail if you have a Gmail account. And it works with Outlook and Salesforce as well. I've just been really, really impressed with it. And I've got tangible evidence. There are big deals that I've closed that I'm pretty confident would not have happened if I didn't have the ability to communicate this way, especially when you're working with people on the other side of the country, people where it's just not practical to ever see them face to face. This gives you a really convenient way to do that.
Yeah, I've mentioned BombBomb on the show once before briefly. I'm glad you're having a lot of success with it too. Real estate is a people and numbers business, and relationships are the glue that keep people together. And to be able to convey your thoughts in a video email, you're just going to make a stronger impression in that recipient's mind, depending on the nature of the material, rather than a written email, because sometimes it can even be faster than going ahead and typing out an email, depending on how fast that you type. In a lot of these turnkey markets that we deal with, our investors, they don't live in that same market. So this is a great way to help build a relationship remotely with video email. And that's BOMB.com.
The next one that came to mind is a website called Rocket Lawyer. And Rocket Lawyer is something that I discovered about a year and a half ago now. The whole idea behind Rocket Lawyer is it gives you access to hundreds of these different legal agreements and contracts and things that are really very applicable to real estate investors and anybody in the real estate trade, whether you need to sign like a rental agreement or a deed or a purchase agreement or a land contract or any of these things. It gives you a lot of these templates. And the thing that makes Rocket Lawyer really unique is that they don't just sell you a template and then you're on your own. They actually bring you through a questionnaire where you fill out all the information that's going to go into this template. So they kind of like stitch it together for you. So by the time you get to the end, it is a ready to rock document where all the information is in there. A lot of the state specific stuff is kind of baked into the template. It's probably the most user-friendly agreement compilation software or website that I've ever seen before. I will say, I think there are some cases where there may be like state-specific laws or statutes that you really should be aware of. So I don't want to say it's like a absolute solution in every situation, but in a lot of situations, I think if you're looking for the most user-friendly way to put a certain type of agreement together, it can be a really solid choice.
Okay, and in recent years, we've really seen the rise of sometimes when people don't want to outsource to a conventional property manager, they use sort of these, websites that help integrate a lot of the property management, but yet someone can effectively self-manage remotely. I know Buildium.com is one that some have favored. You're more familiar with Cozy.co. Tell us about Cozy.
Yeah, that's right. Well, personally, I have property managers who manage all of my duplexes right now, but I do know several people who have been using Cozy, and it's a really compelling idea just in terms of a really convenient way to manage your properties without having to get a property manager involved, which can effectively save you a lot of money, especially if you have a lot of properties. I think the whole idea behind it is you can use this software and it's largely free. I think the way they make money is when you pull background checks and credit checks on borrowers and that kind of thing. But really the idea is you can use it to find tenants and get the payments processed and generate reports and do a lot of the stuff that a property manager is going to do anyway. I think the only thing it can't do is do like on-site showing or meet a tenant in person. That's where you would have to kind of do your own work or find somebody who can do it for you. But aside from that, I mean, really seems like about 80% of the job of property management can be handled through a service like Cozy. And again, I've not used it myself, but when I heard about just the idea and how much easier it can make that property management process without costing you a fortune, really seemed like something that maybe I should be looking into. So I just thought it was a really cool idea.
It might fit the real estate investor that has some properties, but they aren't very satisfied with the property manager that they're currently using. And then maybe that property management company can be retained to handle the leasing only, because a lot of property managers will offer you a service where they're not doing the ongoing management, but they're handling the leasing and the showings and the applications and the screening for you and so on. So this might be a good tool for that person.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds like a good way to sort of use them both to each other's benefit. Another website that I've been using, and it's actually a website that helps you build websites, and it's called Lead Propeller. I've been using it for about 2 years now, I think, and I use it for my selling website and also for my landing page when I'm trying to build a buyer's list. Lead Propeller, I think the reason it's special and important to people who are real estate investors, say like if you want to list your own properties for rent or for sale or anything like that, Lead Propeller takes a job that's kind of complicated and kind of confusing for the average person, building a website. I've got, I think, 5 websites in my business right now. I still don't really understand it. I've had to get a lot of help from other third parties, but I will say that the easiest websites I've ever put together were the ones through Lead Propeller, because they really make it very easy to, I think it's called like a what you see is what you get editor. So if you want a picture in a certain spot, or if you want to change the wording of something, or if you want to change the navigation menu or anything like that, it's just a lot easier and more naturally intuitive to move things around and add content and delete content and just make it look the way you want it to be. The thing that makes it nice is that all these websites are mobile responsive, so they look good on any device and it's really easy to update them. The way it works is it's a monthly subscription service. So I think at the time of this recording anyway, it's like $49 a month, but that gives you up to 3 websites you can have. I thought they did a really good job of taking something that's kind of complicated and making it a lot easier.
All right. Well, part of building a website is going ahead and putting rich, attractive photos there. And there's a free resource for going ahead and getting photos. Tell us about that.
Yeah, definitely. The one that I use is called unsplash.com. And man, I got to tell you, this has been huge for me because as somebody in the blogging world, Keith, I'm sure you're familiar with this. It costs money to go out and get these images that you can download from a site like iStock Photo or Photo Dune or something like that. And like you can't just do a Google search and just pull an image and just use it because a lot of these images are copyrighted. But with Unsplash, the whole point of this website is to offer like extremely high quality images for free. You don't have to give credit to anybody. You can just take them and do whatever you want with them. You can edit them. You can put them on any website. I mean, it's just amazing because the pictures are like really, really good. And you could use these to work as like a backdrop on your website, or I mean, really any application that just needs a good picture of like a landscape or a city or a person or anything like that. Unsplash has a ton of pictures, like thousands upon thousands that you can choose from, and they're all really, really good.
Yeah, and it's all really safe because effectively on that site, the photographer has donated that work to the public space.
Yeah, absolutely. I was really, really lucky, and I took a really cool picture with my camera not long ago, and I was able to upload it, and so one of my pictures is out there too. But pretty much anything you'll find out there, it's not like something that somebody took out their phone and took a picture. It's like a legitimate, professional grade, high quality picture.
Yeah, I've been there. That's really spectacular photography.
Yeah, well, another website I'll mention that's kind of like Lead Propeller. In fact, it's actually very similar, but it's sort of set up differently. Is called Investor Carrot. And it's just a different option if you want to build a website in a similar way that's very, very easy to follow and user friendly. Investor Carrot's another solid option. So I'll just kind of throw that out there in case people are looking for an alternative to Lead Propeller.
Why don't you tell us, since we're talking about website building sites, about the benefits of a real estate investor having a website and having that professional presence?
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think on one hand, the benefit is, say if you're trying to sell a property or buy properties or build a buyer's list or anything like that, a a website is a really good way to automate a lot of that. So it can sort of be like your online showroom that's there 24/7, and you can really make it look however you want it to. On the other hand, I think something that's really important about having a website is that even if you don't get a ton of traffic, even if, your goal isn't to get thousands of organic visitors every month, it's also like a really good credibility builder. So, say if you are coming into contact with somebody who has no idea who you are, you're pretty much just a new name or a face to them. Something that can be really helpful just in making you look more legitimate is if you have a website. And if that website is actually put together well with a lot of good, helpful information and answering a lot of their questions for them. If you've got properties listed, they can look at those. And a website is just a really, really good way to just kind of make yourself look like you know what you're doing. I think you can totally survive without a website. It's not like you must have one, but if you can go through those motions to put one together, it's only going to help you.
Okay, so again, those two resources for building a website are Lead Propeller and Investor Carrots. So as you think about how you position yourself with your relationships, if you think about sending a BombBomb video and then in the signature line of the email, you have your website link there, you can just kind of think about the impression that gives toward your professionalism and how serious of an investor you are.
Another service that I just started using about a month ago is a website called BluePay. And this is kind of a big deal for somebody who runs a business like I do, like a land investor. The reason being, BluePay is a really unique service in that it allows you to accept payments for real estate deals through credit card. And I didn't realize this until I started researching it a few years back, but it's like very, very, very difficult to find a way to allow people to pay you for real estate by credit card. A lot of people, like, the default idea is PayPal or Stripe or something like that.
Right.
And these companies are there to help process credit card payments, but they all have terms and conditions saying that you cannot use their service for the purpose of real estate. Just across the board, you can't do it. If you want to make it easy for people to pay you, allowing them to use a credit card is a huge advantage, but it's really hard to find a way to do that. But BluePay was a company I discovered that can do that. They're totally willing to give their blessing for, receiving payments, whether it's like a rental payment or an earnest deposit or an assignment fee, or if you're setting up like a seller finance deal, or in my case, sometimes they'll sell a piece of land for $5,000 or $10,000. If it's just one lump sum payment for that kind of amount, you could use it for that too. It's a really nice way if you want to make it as easy as possible for people to pay you. That's a system that can do that. And once you're signed up, you have a merchant account. You have the ability to put together payment forms, and you could email somebody a link so they could just pay you from their computer or pay you from their phone. You can even put like a buy now button on your website beneath your property. And that's something I don't think a lot of people will do anyway, but if you really wanted to, somebody could feasibly buy your property with a credit card from your website. So just having the ability to do that, whether or not it's actually practical or realistic, but just having the ability to do that is huge.
If someone wants to send you money, you sure do want to make it easy for them. So, well, that's a good one. BluePay. I didn't know about that. I'm going to have to look into it. So again, that's bluepay.com.
Something else I've been using, it's a free tool. It's called Trello. And this is something that I think you use it too, Keith. A lot of people have probably heard of it, but it's just a really good project management online cloud-based software. You can invite multiple users to it, or, in my case, I just use it for myself. It's a really good way to keep my thoughts and my ideas and my projects organized. And I think it's an awesome tool that can be used to, make sure work is getting done in the right order and that you're not forgetting about tasks that need to be completed. How do you use it, Keith? Do you use that frequently in your business?
I actually use Trello with my virtual assistants through a virtual assistant service called getleverage.com.
Sure.
Basically, the way I use Trello to interface with my assistants is, first of all, with Trello, Just imagine you have a number of square sticky notes on a table, and you have those sticky notes arranged into columns and rows, and you might have a card with a certain task on it. Oh, it might be a task for anything, selling cars, moving furniture, proofreading a blog article that I wrote. And you can go ahead and take that sticky note, and when I have a task that I want, I'll move that sticky note underneath the assistant column. And then when the assistant is done with it, they'll move that virtual sticky note back under the Keith column. So now I know the ball's in my court to respond next, and then I might pass it back to the assistant column again once I've worked on it. But then when we're all done, we can move that virtual sticky note over into the done column because that task is done. So it's a great way to know how you're communicating with people, to see that communicated flow, and also to know which court the ball is in because you arrange it underneath the column depending on whose task it is next.
Good explanation. The last thing I'll mention, and this is something that really can apply to a lot of people in a lot of situations. It's a service called Text Expander. It's actually like a software you can download. And Text Expander, I mean, this might be something a lot of us do without even realizing it, but I know in my world, there's a lot of like sentences or phrases or even full-blown emails that I send out on a regular basis that say the exact same thing, like, hey, so-and-so, thanks for reaching out, or maybe like the URL of my website, or something that might take me, 5 or 10 or 20 seconds to type out. But with Text Expander, it allows you to store a lot of these things, like these canned phrases or sentences or full-blown emails in my case. And all you have to do is type in like a combination of like 2 or 3 or 4 letters, and it will automatically populate that entire thing, and it just sort of pops up and it's done. So if there's anything that you find yourself typing a lot of repetitively, just the exact same thing, Text Expander, when you add up all those little chunks of 30 seconds or a minute, when you do them over and over and over again, it can save you a ton of time and just mental energy because it's just kind of done for you. Text Expander is, I believe it's only available on the Mac, I think. And I think there's a similar one available for the PC called Brevity. I've never used that. I've just heard of it. If you're trying to get it for a PC and you can't get Text Expander, it might be worth checking out Brevity as well.
Just dropping back to Trello for a moment, I'm probably dreaming, but wouldn't it be nice if when you're buying a piece of turnkey real estate, you could have everyone involved with that transaction on the same Trello board? My gosh, that would help closings go so much faster. If you had a column of these virtual sticky notes underneath your loan officer, underneath your home inspector, underneath your title company representative, underneath your turnkey provider, wow, that would be a dream. But yeah, I just don't know if you can get all those people on board with using Trello, despite the fact that it's really easy to use. Maybe I'm dreaming.
And I know Trello, another thing I appreciate about them is that they've got a really, really good iPhone app that I use all the time. It's laid out well. It's easy to use. I know there's another app out there called Wunderlist. It's Wunderlist. It's kind of a similar thing where there's a website version and then an app version. The idea is you can just create these shared checklists like for literally any purpose. Whatever you want. But you can kind of invite people to share your checklist with you. So say if there's like 5 things that a certain person needs to get done in order to close the deal, that's a way to, make sure they understand what still needs to be done. And once somebody checks the box and checks it off the list, it comes off of everybody's list, everybody who's synced up with that same list. So it's another way to just kind of keep everybody on the same page about what still needs to be done and what is done.
Yeah, and some of these tools, like Trello, are actually so simple that you're afraid that you don't understand it because it is so simple and you actually already do understand it. It's sort of like using a file sharing service like Dropbox. It's so simple you almost think you don't understand it, but no, you actually do understand it. It's just that simple.
You bet.
Well, Seth Williams, it's great to have you back on Get Rich Education. How can our listeners connect with you and your resources?
Yeah, thanks again for having me, Keith. If anybody needs to get a hold of me for anything, my website is retipster.com, and feel free to check it out. I've got a blog there. I have a contact page. I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, and Seth's a really good writer. I'm a fan of his work. I regularly read his articles, and I recommend it. Seth Williams, thanks for coming back.
Thanks a lot, Keith.
Here's hoping that you've got more weapons of mass production in your arsenal than you had before you started listening today, and use those weapons benevolently. A lot of those links are in the show notes for you. Next week, from terrific, historic Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, we're going to talk with a mortgage loan officer about what it takes to get you the best terms and the lowest mortgage interest rates on investment property loans today. The following week, Rich Dad tax advisor Tom Wheelwright will be back with us. Until next week, thanks to the down-to-earth and resourceful Seth Williams, and find a lot of the resources he talked about and more at his website, retipster.com. Find your next income property at greturnkey.com. I'm your host, Keith Weinhold. Until next week, live a life of abundance and don't quit your daydream.
You've been listening to Get Rich Education, telling you what the wealthy won't tell you about real estate and investing.
Nothing on this show should be considered specific, personal, or professional advice. Please consult an appropriate tax, legal, real estate, financial, or business professional for individualized advice. Opinions of guests are their own. Information is not guaranteed. All investment strategies have the potential for profit or loss. The host is operating on behalf of Get Rich Education, LLC exclusively.
Cash flow real estate investors nationwide and worldwide, this is Get Rich Education's Keith Weinhold. Forbes has rated Memphis, Tennessee as the #1 cash flowing market in the world. Our good friends at Mid-South Homebuyers have been Memphis's premier turnkey real estate provider for 14 years with a stellar reputation and an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau. Owner Terry Kerr was born and raised in Memphis. Yeah, he knows the market and has renovated and sold over 1,000 houses in the Memphis area. Find out what their many repeat buyers already know. Their houses are completely renovated, even come with a 1-year builder's warranty and a lifelong rental guarantee. They're a perfect fit for the first-time out-of-state investor or the seasoned investor diversifying their portfolio. Mid-South Homebuyers' friendly staff makes investing easy. Learn more at midsouthhomebuyers.com or give them a call at 901-217-HOME. The preceding program was brought to you by your home for wealth building, GetRichEducation.com.